The story kicked off with a sleepy truck driver. He was hauling a load of chemicals toward a small town, yawning all the way. Suddenly, a little rabbit darted right into the middle of the road. Spooked, the driver swerved hard to avoid it. With a loud clang, a metal barrel of chemicals tumbled off the truck. It rolled down the slope and splashed into the nearby reservoir. The toxic green sludge inside gushed right into the water. Nearby, in a small house, an old man named Joshua ran a bizarre little farm. He specialized in raising all kinds of exotic spiders. One day, a local boy named Mike dropped by for a visit. As soon as he walked in, he noticed something was off. The spiders looked like they had bulked up massively. It turned out Joshua had been catching tons of crickets from the area. He used them as high-protein feasts, feeding his spiders one by one. As a result, the 8-legged critters got more voracious, and their sizes skyrocketed. Mike watched in fascination, staring at the jumping spiders in the cabinet. But he didn't notice that the glass tank was compromised. The prized possession, a huge tarantula, had already sneaked out through a crack. Joshua proudly played the tour guide, dropping some spider trivia on Mike. Take those orb weavers, for example. The males compete desperately to woo the females with gifts. They bring beetles or even mice, wrapped up like a marriage proposal package. But the females are 3 times the size of the males. Once they catch their prey, they inject venom straight into them. It liquefies the insides into soup. Then, while the victim is still alive, she slowly slurps them dry. After the chat, it was time for Mike to head home. The old man saw him out and went back to tending his spiders. But the moment Mike left, that escaped tarantula made its move. It crawled right up onto Joshua's back. Zip! It sank its fangs right into his neck. Delirious from the venom, Joshua went into a panic and started thrashing around. He smashed all the glass cages to smithereens. The spiders swarmed out in droves. Instantly, it was like unleashing an 8-legged freaks care package on the whole town. Cut to 1 week later. The town welcomed its returning leading man, Chris McCormick. He was the son of the local mine owner. His dad had died 10 years ago, leaving the mine abandoned ever since. Chris came back to sort out the mine situation. He was staying with his Aunt Gladys. Meanwhile, Mike's mother, Sheriff Samantha Parker, was out on patrol. She spotted a strange chemical barrel down by the riverbank. Up close, the residue inside didn't look safe at all. Her deputy Pete helped drag the barrel up, but the guy wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Wearing filthy rubber gloves, he wiped the barrel and then immediately rubbed his bald head. He successfully gave himself a chemical scalp treatment. On the way back to the station, Samantha pulled over some bikers. She gave them the standard fine and a lecture to boot. One of the girls on a motorcycle happened to be her rebellious daughter, Ashley. Ashley's boyfriend, Brett, wasn't having it. He talked trash, threatening to call his stepdad, the mayor, to deal with this cop. That night, Mike thought about old Joshua and called to check in, but nobody picked up the phone. What he didn't know was that both Joshua and his farm were already completely covered in cobwebs. Meanwhile, Mayor Wade was hosting a town hall meeting. He put on a friendly face and urged the locals to sell their homes to an outside investor. He claimed it would jumpstart the local economy, but the townspeople knew exactly what kind of guy he was. Everyone suspected the old fox was pulling another scam. Someone pointed out that the real issue was the mines beneath their homes. Folks remembered that before he died, Chris's dad claimed he'd found a rich vein of gold down there. While the room was buzzing, Chris walked right through the door. He made his stance crystal clear. He wasn't selling the mine, period. Hearing that, Wade immediately started running his mouth. He even badmouthed Chris's late father. Chris didn't hesitate. He threw a punch and laid the mayor flat. Sheriff Samantha acted all official and slapped the cuffs on him. She claimed she was hauling him in, but the second they got in the car, she unlocked the cuffs and let him go. Her daughter, Ashley, stood by with a smirk. She caught her mom checking out Chris's butt the whole time. Later that night, Deputy Pete was doing some handyman work at home. His cat suddenly noticed movement in the corner. It watched a spider scurry right into a hole in the wall. The couple tried to coax the cat out with treats. Suddenly, sounds of a violent struggle erupted from behind the wall. Then, everything went dead silent. There was no more meowing, just an eerie silence. The next day, Aunt Gladys nagged Chris to go ask Samantha out. Her message was loud and clear. The sheriff is single, you're single, quit stalling, and go get her. Elsewhere, Deputy Pete called the sheriff, sobbing his eyes out. He said something had eaten his cat. To make matters worse, his wife had packed her bags and left him too. Samantha was juggling work stress and her troublemaking daughter. She finally just gave Ashley a taser so the girl could protect herself. Meanwhile, Chris finally worked up the nerve. Holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, he knocked on the sheriff's door to ask her out. As for young Mike, he plucked up the courage to head out to Joshua's farm, all by himself. He pushed his way through the front gate, hacking a path through the thick layers of spider webs. To get some proof, the kid pulled out his handheld device to record the scene. Joshua was nowhere to be found inside the house. All that was left was a lonely pair of shoes. The ground was covered in massive footprints and webbing. All the trails led straight toward the mines. Mike shone his light and ducked into the mine shaft. He hadn't gone far when he spotted something terrifying nearby. Crouched right there was a monstrous giant spider. At the same time, Chris decided to take over his father's mining business. While inspecting the mine shafts, he warned the workers. He told them methane levels were high, so they had to be extra careful. On the drive back to town, he bumped into Mike running out of the mines. He picked the kid up and gave him a ride. Mike showed off the trophy he had hacked off earlier, a massive spider leg. He nervously explained that the escaped spiders had settled in the mines and grown into total monsters. Chris just thought the kid was telling ghost stories. He laughed it off and cracked a joke. Isn't this just a piece of a big cactus? Back at the mine, the workers started drilling. Suddenly, the water hose ran dry for no reason. One worker leaned in to check it. He decided to suck on the hose to clear it, but no water came out. Instead, he got a mouthful of baby spiders. Before he could react, a swarm of much bigger spiders crawled out of the hole. They rushed right at him. Back in town, Mike told his mom everything. He insisted the mines were crawling with giant spiders. But Samantha just assumed her son had watched too many horror movies and was confusing fiction with reality. Meanwhile, Brett overheard his stepdad, Mayor Wade, talking on the phone. The conversation sounded sketchy. It turned out Wade was secretly planning to turn the abandoned mines into a toxic waste dump to store chemical trash. The mayor also owned an ostrich farm. That day, the ostriches suddenly went berserk, screeching and running wild. Wade went out with his shotgun to investigate. When he got close, he saw only a pair of ostrich legs left on the ground. The entire body was gone. Not far away, several ostriches were screaming as spiders burst from the ground and dragged them into the earth. The next morning, the town's radio host, who was also a conspiracy theorist, excitedly announced on air, 4 pets have already vanished this morning. I'm telling you folks, it's definitely aliens doing butt experiments again. At that moment, Ashley was still hanging out with Brett and his biker gang. She was totally fed up with Brett's groping, so she just raised her hand, took the taser, and jammed it right into Brett's crotch. Brett fell out of the car instantly. The pain made him wet himself, soaking his pants right there in the street. Ashley decided she was done. She drove away. Just then, on the distant hillside, several spiders appeared. They were the size of cars. Terrified, Brett crawled back to his motorcycle. He revved the throttle, trying to escape, but these jumping spiders were incredibly fast. They caught up to his friends in no time. Before the riders could even scream, the spiders took them out, one by one. Finally, only Brett was left running for his life. He even managed to kick away a spider that lunged at him, but his relief didn't last long. The pack of spiders suddenly turned. They targeted a moving oil tanker truck. The monsters swarmed like cockroaches. They knocked the tanker truck right over. It crashed into a utility pole. Boom! The tanker exploded. Flames shot into the sky. A whole bunch of spiders got blown up, too. But there was a price to pay. The town's phone lines were completely destroyed. Everyone was cut off from the outside world. Brett, hiding nearby, thought he had survived. But then he looked again. He realized the jumping spiders weren't all dead. Covered in dirt and soot, he was forced to hide in the mines for safety. The next victim was Gladys's little dog. She heard noises coming from below. She went into the basement. She found a massive hole in the floor. It went straight down into the deep mines. As soon as she got close, a swarm of orb weavers reached out. They were all starving. Chris arrived just in time. He chased Gladys into the basement, but all he found was another giant spider leg near the hole. Now he finally realized Mike wasn't telling ghost stories. It was a real monster situation. Without saying a word, he rushed to find Mike. He slammed the spider leg specimen onto the table. The boy recognized it instantly. It was the leg of the giant 8-legged freak he had seen in the mines. Mike figured something out. If a leg that big had fallen off, you could only imagine how huge the actual spider was. Based on his theory, Aunt Gladys might still be alive. The male spiders probably just wrapped her up like a romantic gift basket. They were planning to offer her to the giant female spider for dinner. Meanwhile, poor Ashley was sulking in her room. Suddenly, a shadow flashed past the window. A massive orb weaver quietly crept inside. The next second, it lunged right at Ashley. It bit her and started wrapping the poor girl into a living human cocoon. Ashley screamed for her life. Chris heard the noise and rushed into the room. He grabbed a wooden stool and smashed the spider with it, but the thing was tough. Chris got thrown into the corner in no time. It looked like he was about to get wrapped up too. Just in the nick of time, Sheriff Mom Samantha burst in. She raised her shotgun and fired. The 8-legged freak was blown to pieces. The room was finally safe for the moment. Samantha knew this was a major crisis. She immediately called Deputy Pete. She told him to grab every weapon he could find and get over there ASAP. Pete didn't dare mess around this time. He loaded up the guns and hit the road. At the same time, Brett, hiding in the mines, wandered right near the giant female spider's lair. He saw it with his own eyes. That massive orb weaver was sucking the miners dry, one by one, just like sucking boba pearls through a straw. Up near the mine entrance, a few more spiders crept all the way to the local barber shop. As soon as they got in, they wrapped an old man up like a human burrito and hung him from the ceiling. Out on the highway, a whole pack of jumping spiders was chasing Pete's car. A bunch of them latched onto the back bumper, dangling there like flashy car ornaments. Then Mike dropped a truth bomb that made everyone freak out even more. Joshua had about 100, maybe even 200 spiders, and these guys were all nocturnal hunters. That meant once the sun went down, the whole town would become their all-you-can-eat buffet. They had to evacuate the residents immediately. The only way to get the word out fast was the radio station. The group sped toward radio host Harlan's trailer. Those jumping spiders chased Pete all the way to the sheriff's front door. One of them actually parked itself right on top of the squad car. Luckily, they spotted it in time. They blew its head off with one shot. Everyone piled into the car and raced to that beat-up radio trailer. Inside Harlan's studio, Samantha didn't care if people believed her or not. She spilled the whole truth. She spoke dead seriously on air. The town is under attack by giant spiders. Everyone needs to evacuate to the mall immediately. Ironically, Harlan, the conspiracy theorist, who usually ranted about aliens doing experiments, thought giant spiders sounded totally ridiculous. Before anyone knew what was happening, a massive tarantula had already crawled onto the trailer. It started tearing into the metal shell like it was opening a can of soda. Mike scrambled to warn his mom over the radio. Samantha immediately changed her broadcast, telling everyone in town to run for the shopping mall. The tarantula didn't care about the gunfire. The bullets outside were just like fireworks to it. It knocked the trailer over, sending it rolling across the ground. The people inside scrambled out of the wreckage at the very last second. Residents listening by their radios heard the whole crash live. That's when it hit them. This wasn't a prank show. It was their reality. Pretty soon, everyone saw them with their own eyes. The legendary supersized spiders. 8-legged monsters covered the walls and car roofs, swarming into the local cafe. A few unlucky folks were dragged straight into holes in the ground, cut off before they could even finish screaming. The streets felt completely overrun, like there were already more spiders than people. Even hiding in a car was useless. The spiders just ripped the doors right off. Nowhere was safe. The first group of survivors barely managed to make it to the mall entrance. Mayor Wade was standing there, totally confused, wondering what everyone was so afraid of, until he slowly turned his head and saw dozens of 8-legged beasts hunting down his voters. Samantha, Chris, and the others fired their guns to cover the retreat, managing to get most people inside the mall. They dove through the doors at the very last second, just as the metal security gate slammed shut with a clang. It was just enough to hold back the army of spiders. Inside, the crowd was on the verge of a breakdown, shouting over one another. "What the hell is happening?" Mike stepped up to explain the situation. He told everyone that the spiders hunted by sound and vibration. The louder they got, the more spiders would come running. So if they wanted to live, they had to be quiet and tread lightly. No stomping on the floor. Next, they had to figure out how to call the military for help. Mayor Wade happened to have a cell phone, but the signal in that place was garbage. They would have to climb to the roof of the mall just to get a call out. The survivors had to scavenge through the stores. They grabbed whatever household items they could find to use as weapons. Harlan and Chris were in charge of the roof mission. Mike insisted on giving them a tip before they left. He told them to douse themselves in something with a strong scent. The pungent smell would mess with the spiders' senses. It would confuse them for a little while. The roof was clear of spiders for the moment, but down in the parking lot, that massive tarantula was acting like a tank. It stomped around, crushing smaller spiders into goo as it went. Chris started climbing the radio tower to call for help. Meanwhile, Mayor Wade had zero intention of sticking it out with the group. He used the chaos to sneak out the mall's back door. He even locked it behind him. He was your typical, "I'm out. Good luck to you guys," kind of politician. Harlan fired a few shots into the air trying to buy Chris some time. But when Chris got to the top, he realized a problem. He didn't actually know the direct line for the military, so he helplessly dialed 911. The operator heard him say, "We're surrounded by giant mutant spiders." They immediately thought it was a prank call and hung up on him. But in reality, those mutant spiders he talked about were already crowding the mall entrance. The mall security guard finally noticed the mayor was missing. He figured his honor had probably sneaked off to the mines to hide. He left the regular folks behind to fight the spider army alone. The giant tarantula tore a massive hole right through the metal security gate. Countless smaller spiders flooded in like a black tidal wave. Walls, ceilings, elevators, handrails, crawling shapes covered everything. The number of survivors was dropping fast. The whole mall was turning into a giant spider playground. Samantha gave the order for everyone to retreat to the basement. Pete had fired almost all his bullets. He was cursing and running at the same time. He was about to make it to the safe hallway when a spider's long leg hooked his ankle. In a panic, he grabbed a chainsaw that was right there. He revved it up with a loud vroom. Up on the roof, Harland was actually terrified of heights. He knew he should climb higher for a better signal, but his legs were shaking too much to move. He lost his footing and fell right off the roof. Luckily, he landed in some bushes and barely survived. The spiders kept climbing the tower, forcing Chris to grab a cable and slide down into a ventilation shaft to escape. Over at the mines, Brett finally found his escape artist stepdad in the dark. They barely exchanged 2 words before a spider lunged out. It dragged the mayor straight into the deep darkness. He didn't even have time to call out, "Dad." Samantha helped Chris open the vent so they could crawl out, but another spider hiding in the corner ambushed the old security guard following them. The old guy didn't make the survivor cut. The group in the basement thought they were finally safe, but soon, something massive started banging on the door from the outside. Everyone held their breath in terror. When the door finally burst open, it was actually Brett driving a forklift. The kid drove right through, knocking the door and frame flying. He nearly gave everyone a heart attack. Chris knew the layout of the mines, so he decided to lead everyone through the underground tunnels to escape. Before long, they smelled something familiar in the air: methane. That meant a single spark could turn the whole mine into a fireworks show. The security guard leading the way got unlucky very quickly. A spider snatched him from the shadows, but no one dared to shoot. One spray of bullets would likely blow them all sky high. Luckily, that quick-thinking worker was still carrying a crossbow, so they finally had a long-range weapon they could use. The path to the exit had to go right through the giant female orb weaver's lair. The cave walls all around were lined with white cocoons. Some held corpses that had already been sucked dry, but from others you could still hear faint moans. Mayor Wade was hanging upside down in midair. He looked just like a side of bacon, quietly waiting to be served as the main course. Meanwhile, the tarantulas had completely torn through the defenses back at the mall. More spiders flooded into the mines. They chased the survivors down the tunnels. The exit was right in front of them. Chris told everyone to make a run for it, but he doubled back himself. He had to find his Aunt Gladys, who was still missing. The plan was simple. Once the group got out of the mine, Samantha had to start the generator outside. Chris had already cooked up a totally crazy idea in his head. Before they split up, Samantha told him she knew all along that he had a crush on her. If he had just made his move years ago, maybe their lives would have turned out very differently. With that, she turned and ran toward the exit. Chris went deep into the mines. He checked the bodies in the cocoons, one by one. Luckily, he finally found Gladys. She hadn't been sucked dry yet. She was only half marinated. Even crazier, on the rock wall right behind him, something was glittering. It turned out there really was a massive vein of gold hidden there. The group managed to escape the mine, but as soon as Gladys got out, her bad habit almost got her killed. She turned back to nag about something, but the giant female spider had already crept up on her and Chris. They couldn't shoot. The mine was still full of methane gas, so Chris thought fast. He grabbed a bottle of perfume from Gladys's bag. He sprayed it right in the spider's face. The strong scent totally stunned the female spider. While the monster was stumbling around, Chris hoisted his aunt onto a motorcycle. He gunned the engine and sped away. The dazed spider led a whole pack of its minions chasing hot on their heels. Meanwhile, Samantha reached the generator. She remembered her daughter's taser. She didn't hesitate. She jammed the taser right into the switch. The electricity surged all the way to a shattered light bulb. Zap! A spark flashed. The entire mine shaft was already filled to the brim with methane gas. The next second, a massive explosion blew the mine completely sky high. All the spiders, including that giant female, were instantly swallowed by the sea of fire. Chris and his aunt were on the motorcycle. Just as the flames caught up to them, they burst out of the tunnel mouth. The mine blew up, and for good measure, it took the mayor's shopping mall right up with it. When the dust finally settled, police and fire trucks from the next town over came screaming onto the scene. It turned out these guys were all die-hard fans of Harland's show. When they heard him on the live broadcast, not spouting nonsense like usual, but genuinely begging for help, their first reaction was, "Oh crap, this time it's actually real!" So they all rushed over with sirens blaring. In the aftermath, Deputy Pete made a surprising discovery. Ever since getting splashed by that chemical barrel, his shiny bald spot had actually started sprouting new hair. He had literally become the perfect poster child for hair growth.